Welcome to The Wing, the emotional and financial health check you never knew you needed. We provide tangible solutions for young women to build emotional health and wealth on their journey from school to motherhood. This is the podcast for young women in Australia navigating the big stuff: life, money, and motherhood. From high school to first homes, babies to bank accounts, we take you on an interactive listening journey that helps you make smart, empowered decisions every step of the way.
Hello, ladies. Welcome to another episode of the Wing podcast. We are very excited today to discuss some fundamental elements of being a new mum, having a small baby, particularly having a small baby that maybe doesn't sleep that much. The importance of sleep, the importance of rest. I'm going to share some personal stories about some subsequent hospital visits after I had my son, and then hopefully we'll tie it all up in a little bow and you will have a nice episode to listen to. So I'm going to frame the conversation firstly by saying that I'm a huge fan of an author called Tizzy Hall. Now, I've gone as far to add Tizzy Hall on LinkedIn or connect with her. She has not yet accepted my request, but I thought in lieu of Tizzy connecting with me virtually, I don't want to hold up the process in something that I've always wanted to do somehow, and that is to essentially promote her book for free. There's nothing in this for me other than sharing knowledge, very valuable, life-changing knowledge. But I thought, why let that hold up the process when I can just be, I've read most of this book. We are familiar with the processes in the book, and there are some really great and valuable deep dives that we can do that are going to help all the mums and dads out there that have babies that need to sleep that maybe don't sleep, and parents that need to sleep that maybe don't sleep. The book is called Save Our Sleep. It's my favorite book in the whole wide world. It should be called Save Our Marriage, because I think that's what it did. Now, Jake, if you're listening to this one, don't you get upset about that comment. It's not the only reason we're still married, that our children sleep through the night. It certainly helps our marriage, but it's not the only reason there. So I'm going to tell you about the book because I can't afford to buy thousands of copies for my thousands of listeners. I'm just kidding, we're not there yet, but we're working on it. I have bought multiple copies of Save Our Sleep over time because I have had a lot of friends in my network that have had babies or are about to have babies that I think, what is the most useful thing that I can get them that they may not know about? And more often than not, it's Save Our Sleep. Sometimes it's a bottle of gripe water, which I'm happy to touch on that, and a self-care journal. Those are my sort of three go-tos. I guess the Save Our Sleep addresses baby and parent sleeping, which is a fundamental tool you need for survival. Gripe water helps young children with belly pain or a lot of wind. It's a natural remedy you can buy over the counter at the pharmacy. I love gripe water. And thirdly, a self-care journal, because in previous episodes, as I've mentioned, that is something that I strongly believe in, especially for new parents. And I think that it is a tool you can carry on with for the rest of your life to remind yourself that you're not a complete psycho person and your hormones just had a big crash and you grew and delivered a human being into the world. So that's kind of a big deal and you shouldn't be so hard on yourself. Wow, if only I could have said that to myself the last 2 times. Maybe I'll try and say it this 3rd time after I have this baby, but we'll see. Or maybe I'll just listen to this podcast, pick up Save Our Sleep, get my self-care journal out and saddle up next to a bottle of gripe water. Now, let's talk about sleep deprivation. So this frames the whole entire topic, right? And I'm sure anyone you're listening, I know you know this, but we're just going to go over it because I need you to soak in all of the points and why this is the most important book in the whole world. So not getting enough sleep is a big problem for the body and mind. After all, sleep deprivation was used as a form of torture during the World Wars. So many parts of that sentence are so intense, but it's true. So unless you have looked after a baby that does not sleep, it is difficult to try and imagine what this is like. Now, my pregnant ladies that might be listening to this, there's a chance you might be experiencing some insomnia. I certainly am. All 3 pregnancies. That continues to bother me, and I'm getting really sick of being up from 2 a.m. to 5 a.m. Mostly thinking about this podcast, actually, in a positive way. But it's really difficult to turn off insomnia. But I honestly think it's the female body preparing you for motherhood because you do tend to have you don't really have insomnia, I guess, but you've got to get up and you've got to feed the baby during the night time for those early months. So I don't know, maybe if we look at it through that lens, it's not as annoying when you're lying there staring at the roof from 2 a.m. to 5 a.m. Now, sleep deprivation can cause depression, short temper, guilt, mood swings, fatigue, irritability, careless mistakes, difficulty concentrating, slower reaction times, and increased stress levels. Now, if that's not a cocktail for disaster, I don't know what is. And I would say it's very safe to say I've felt every single one of those things. Certainly after having, probably during all 3 pregnancies and postnatally after the first 2. Obviously, we get to see what this third one brings, but I'm pretty confident it's going to be a same sort of different story kind of situation. But maybe I'm more prepared this time. I don't know. We'll see. So what the book is designed to do is to help new parents out there to avoid this slow form of torture, because really it is. And you would know this. Everybody's been tired, once in their lives at least. But stacking that on after technically a trauma like birth, and then straight away you're a parent and you have to look after this small little being, which hopefully does actually sleep a lot in those early days. But there's a lot to learn. It's a whole other experience that obviously lots of parents talk about, and I know there's been conversations where people have successfully talked out other people of having children purely because of the sleep deprivation side of things. I mean, if I could shout to the rooftops, the world would probably be overpopulated because everyone would be having babies if I told them how well this method works. If you follow it and you're diligent and you're consistent. And look, it's worked for us twice, and not just with our kids. I've passed this knowledge on to, I think it's about 3 other babies. So I'm no sleep coach, but it works for us. So, and Tizzy Hall is a respected author and self-proclaimed international baby whisperer. So there's got to be something in this. And if this helps you, then great. Another good part of this book is that it covers off on how mothers should try and get off to a good start. Now, that made me laugh because it's like, yeah, we're really trying to get off to a good start, but oh boy, that can be variable. It's a bit of an old-fashioned rule. There's also a method I'm not going to go into it right now, but the, I guess, ethos of Chinese confinement theory, which is where after you've had your baby, you spend the first 30, 60, 90, 120 days, the first trimester, after you've, like the 4th trimester, in your home practicing these different values that Chinese culture predominantly promotes. So, you're only eating warm foods, hot or warm foods. You don't turn the air conditioner on. You don't wash your hair. You are just you and your baby. There's no visitors. Like, to me, it sounds like, maybe aside from the not washing hair bit and maybe the air conditioning if it's a hot Aussie summer when you've had your baby, it sounds like a dream just to be left alone for a whole trimester, just you and your baby. That's it. But unfortunately, a lot of our lives don't necessarily allow that to happen for us. There are various services and things that can assist mothers in this space and bring the Chinese confinement theory into homes, but it's not broadly being done yet. It was certainly something that was my inspiration for the wing, in thinking, hey, couldn't we do a Airbnb, and this is at risk of Airbnb picking up my tiny little podcast and taking it global, but what about Airbnbs with new mums, so that new mums have somewhere to escape to that's a quiet wing of someone's home, or where they can rest and rejuvenate at any hours of the day or night without strict check-in or out times. Is there something in that? Or is it more of, I've always had this idea on sleep rooms. So, you can book a sleep room and you literally just go to a facility to sleep or rest. Or maybe it's a combination of the both, and it's actually a facility where you go and you sleep, but you take your baby, or maybe you don't take your baby and it's like a elongated stay in a beautiful day spa, but it's just quiet. It's quiet and it's nourishing and it's got everything you need in the one spot. So if any of those business ideas appeal to anybody listening, let's have a chat and see what we get off the ground. Not the point of this podcast, but I just thought I'd mention that because it's relevant. So some of the things that come out of the Save Our Sleep is, spending the first 10 days after birth mainly in bed, not tidying up or checking what has not been done in your absence. I like the way she's written that. Try to take your phone off the hook at least once a day. Attempt to have an uninterrupted nap for an hour or longer. Avoid rushing around. If you start to cry, don't worry about it. You're not going to feel like that forever. It's just talking about the hormone drop in that instance. And while you may first feel too tired to get all the normal daily tasks done, as the weeks go on, these tasks can mount up. So what was a couple of little jobs turns into hundreds of little jobs. And this is what I've been saying, the accumulation of the invisible lists that we make up in our heads of things that need to be done and not communicating that with our partners or varying help around the place, that mental load really builds up very early. I would actually find myself sometimes just trying actually not to leave our bedroom area because I just couldn't, if I had have gone to a different area of the house and there was any kind of mess, obviously because the kids are in the middle of their day and there's going to be mess everywhere. It's just that I've come from not being in the mess to being in the mess all of a sudden thinking, oh my God, is this how we live now? But that's not the case, just trying to keep yourself shut off from, and anything that sort of stresses you out in those early phases because you are sleep deprived and you need that rest after the trauma of birth. Now, they also talk about letting sleeping babies lie, but not too long. So in the first few days, newborns can sleep from 16 to 20 hours a day, which is crazy. And it's so funny because you think, oh, I could be sleeping that amount of time. But reality is that you're probably not. You're probably not going to need to sleep that long. And sometimes it's really hard to switch off as well, particularly when you've got the postnatal sweats. I don't know if anyone's had those. That kind of felt good to me because I do like to sweat, but I don't really like to sweat in bed. It makes it difficult to just sort of have a nice relaxing sleep. And you obviously don't feel yourself and you're just getting back to usual bathroom habits and whatnot. And, you might have other kids you need to look after and you've got family that want to check in and see how you're going and all sorts of stuff, just life. But it's very important in those early days to feed your baby frequently, as some newborns don't even have the energy to wake or ask for food. So that's an interesting thing. She's saying that breastfed babies should go no longer than 3 hours in the day and 5 hours at night without a feed. Also, that benefits the breast milk supply as much as the baby's needs because it's sort of, that push-pull, like the baby has to be feeding in order for you to be producing more milk. Or the formula-fed babies can be given their bottle every 4 hours during the day and maybe left for 6 hours between night feeds, simply because the formula is a little more dense and sits in the baby's tummy for a bit longer. This is probably the exact reason. Not the exact reason, sorry. This is one of the reasons that we chose to formula feed because we knew that those feed periods or those wake windows were more spread out. And again, that was from a survival perspective, and it's going to be especially relevant when baby number 3 comes along. By week 2, it is important to be developing some sort of sleeping and feeding routine. Now, that must sound very, very early in the piece. And at that stage of postnatal, you don't know what day it is. So to even know that you're in week 2 would be an absolute miracle. Maybe get someone to tell you that you're in week 2. But to establish these routines, not only for the baby, but for you, because your routine will continually change as your baby gets older. Remembering my eldest is only just over 2 years old. So that's all I'm up to. So I'm not speaking to anything past my experience, but I'm speaking to where we've experienced so far. But having those routines, even if it's a routine that goes on for a couple of weeks and then it might change again, or it's a routine that goes on for a month, it might change again. But the practice of getting into a routine, whether that is feeding, sleeping, as washing, cooking, whatever the little things are that can create those small routines for you as a new parent, it takes away the not knowing. You're still going to not know. There's certain things you're not going to know. Like you're not necessarily going to know what your night ahead looks like. Or I remember thinking, like staying up really late thinking, oh, she needs a feed in about 2 hours time. That's not enough time for me to go and wind down and have a sleep in bed at 9 o'clock at night because I'm just going to be up again at 11 or 12 as an example. So I may as well stay up. Then I would stay up, but she would actually sleep past that 11 o'clock time frame. She might not actually wake for a feed until 1 a.m., say. So in hindsight, I felt like every day was just a game of hindsight because I'd be exhausted the next day and think, oh, if I had just gone to bed at 9 o'clock, then I would have actually gotten about 5 hours sleep But because I didn't want to take that gamble, I ended up just exhausting myself by just staying up. Watched a lot of Sex and the City and Vanderpump Rules. So I wasn't taking advantage of the sleep windows because I didn't really know what they were. And I wasn't able to can't perfect it, absolutely not. But until I started to really dig into this book was when I was thinking, okay, all right, well, I'm just going to trust the process and, wait until she wakes me up for a feed, because I know, because she was the baby that would do that. Which obviously we had to learn that first before we could rely on her doing that. So she just didn't go unfed for hours and hours and hours. That was a part of the process that, we could establish a routine around, because we were like, okay, well, let's just go to bed. We'll just go to sleep when she goes to sleep. And then if she wakes up in 2 hours, she wakes up in 2 hours. If she doesn't wake up in 2 hours, then we get extra sleep. So let's try and do that. Jake and I had also worked out that we were going to stay in separate bedrooms for that first period of time. That was with our daughter. But with our son, my second pregnancy, we ended up sleeping in separate rooms for the last probably 8 weeks of my pregnancy because I was snoring. Whilst that was a bit sad and lonely, it was a good move for us because Jake got a full night's sleep, and apparently so did I, even though I was snoring the house down. But then it was a nice transition for us when the baby came, him and I were in our room, and because Jake was sort of back at work pretty much straight away. So he was still he needed to carry me through the days a lot as well. So I didn't mind if I was up all night, but there was no point in waking up both of us. So we did have to kind of, I guess, swallow our pride a little bit, and we were trying, with our daughter, our first child, to try and, keep it all in the same room and help each other and whatever. But what we ended up realizing is that we were just being counterproductive by both being kept up at night and not getting the sleep that we needed. So we were both, for lack of a better word, rat shit the next day. These are the types of things you will learn about and read about in the Save Our Sleep book. I'm clearly not going to go through page by page, but it does reiterate the importance of a routine, when to start a routine, the golden rule of the 7 o'clock bus, how we react as well to what the babies are actually doing or what they're needing at a certain time. So to give an example here, quite often when parents are woken at 5 a.m, they make the mistake of treating the situation differently than if the disturbance took place at 1 a.m, thinking their baby has had too much sleep by 5 to attempt resettling. So their only option is to get both themselves and the baby up. Unfortunately, this only teaches the baby to keep waking at 5 a.m, and also means that she will have difficulty resettling if she wakes at 3 a.m. one morning. Your baby will get very upset and confused at the different treatment, as she will not understand the difference between 3 a.m. and 5 a.m. So these are things, there is a whole section on this, so you would need to read through this properly, but it just interrupting the routine as they get a little bit older, how critical that can be, different methods on how to not break the routine or not teach the babies different habits that are not sustainable for you or for them. As a live example, so with our daughter, we got her into a really good routine. We were following Save Our Sleep, and she started sleeping through the night at 8 weeks old. So that was great for us, and we were obviously like, woohoo, this is great. We could have 10 of these. Let's have another baby. Anyway, fell pregnant 4 months after had our daughter. And then she obviously got older, and kids get maybe a little bit more to handle as the older they get. I think she was about 8 months old, so I was about 4 months pregnant at that stage. And I remember Jake leaving for work one morning, and we were just looking at each other like, oh my God, what have we done? They really are very close together in age. Is this why everyone looks at us like we're crazy? Is this why no one else is doing this? And there was little bad habits that were starting to crop up at that point in time. So she was actually waking up she was sleeping through the night like an absolute dream for months and months. So she started waking at 3 a.m. pretty much every single morning. And because I was tired, so I'm probably, 16 to 20 weeks pregnant at this stage, and I decided I just need that noise to stop so I can just go back to sleep, because I can't survive. I wasn't working at the time, so granted, I did have times during the following day to, she was still napping sort of 2-3 times a day. So there was a lot of opportunity for me to have a lay down and a rest myself. So I wasn't too concerned about these night feeds that all of a sudden cropped up. But because my mindset was, I'm exhausted, I just need that noise to stop, I knew how to make the noise stop, get up, make a bottle, and quickly feed her and pop her back to bed. And then I can go back to bed and get more sleep for a few more hours. But what I'd inadvertently done in that situation is created a bad habit. So now every morning she would wake at 3 a.m. and I would get up and I would make a bottle and feed her and put her back to bed. Anyway, I was talking to a friend about it who actually had a sleep consultant, and she told me a method that like they had followed Save Our Sleep as well, but this was an extension of that where they had spoken with the consultant, and the consultant said to let them sort of do their thing at 3 a.m. and let them, if you know that they've fed properly all day and they've had their nighttime routine and you know that they can actually sleep through the night by this stage, you know that they don't need anything at 3 a.m. unless you can tell children's different cries and whatnot. If they're actually hurt or really sick or something, it's a different situation. But on a normal day, when I knew she wasn't sick, she'd eaten really well the day before, she had a normal put down routine. There was nothing else that I could possibly have given her aside from more sleep because it was 3 a.m. that she would have needed. So there was no need to intervene. Anyway, the sleep consultant had passed on the information that if you just let them do what they're going to do for 45 minutes, so leave them, they're kind of babbling, they're not really crying, they're sort of crying a bit, just making a bit of noise. We check on the monitors. She was always laying down, like she wasn't standing up and sort of irate and screaming the house down. Like she was just noisy. And then leave them for 45 minutes. Do that for two to 5 nights in a row. I think it usually works from about 2 or 3 nights onwards. Do that. So you're lying there in bed, obviously wide awake, listening to see what your baby's doing, and you're timing the clock for your 45-minute countdown. But the idea is that you've got 2 and a bit nights of sort of pain, I guess, of listening to this and letting this process play out, but then they won't do it anymore. So without a word of a lie, we tried this method, and 3 a.m. came around. We both, Jake and I, agreed on a night that we were going to do this as well, because it's very important that you're both on the same page, because you don't want one person thinking we're going to let her cry it out, for lack of a better word, for 45 minutes, but then you don't communicate that with your partner, and then your partner gets up and feeds her, and then you're like, no, like cause a kerfuffle in the middle of the night, like, no, this is why, like, you don't want to talk about it before you go to bed, to have a plan, agree on it, and then do it. Obviously do it while you're at home. Don't try and do this while you're going away or whatever. So did that 2 nights, 2 nights of that process, done. Back to normal sleep routine, sleeping through the night, 6 till 6, beauty. So taking in this information and, paying attention to routines and soaking all of this book in can really sincerely help you get on with your life and with your, the other things that you want to focus on with your baby, like good nutrition and doing activities, getting outside, going to Gymbaroo, catching up with other people, seeing family, seeing friends. There's plenty of other things that you can be doing to spend your day effectively than wandering around saying how tired you are. Now, in terms of the location of where your baby should sleep, so this is going to be different in every single household, and there is no one size fits all. We personally are not co-sleepers. It doesn't align with what is in Save Our Sleep, and it doesn't align with what Jake and I want out of our sleep routine with our kids. And it's just, that was a personal choice that we made a while ago that we back ourselves on, because we are able to get good sleep, and so are our babies. But in terms of where a baby should sleep in a household, there are many stages that you need to be aware of, or that you would be considering as a new parent, whether you're going a bassinet first next to your bed. Our general routine was probably easier to talk to that, and then you figure out your own approach from there. But so we did bassinet next to our bed first, just because SIDS is still a very real risk in this day and age, and it was something that we were absolutely paranoid about, to make sure that the safe sleeping methods were always in play for our kids, so that there was nothing that happened that shouldn't happen. So we'd go bassinet close to the bed first off, and then we moved them at their respective times into the room next to us, which was sort of like a little nursery with a monitor still. So we had the volume down, but we could see on the screen because we could hear them through the door. And then eventually, when we were comfortable, we would send them into their own room, which was down the hall a little bit from us. They'd stay in a bassinet up until about 6 months. I think our son was out of the bassinet after 4 months because he was a big boy, and into a cot. So they're both still in cots. We haven't done the transition yet over to a big bed for our eldest daughter. But again, referring back to Save Our Sleep, it says to keep them in a cot for as long as you can. Boys typically take a little longer to make that transition. You're probably looking at them being around the age of 3 for that to be a little bit more of a successful mission. And for girls, about 2.5. So we're probably going to let our daughter's one lapse because she'll be 2.5 when the baby arrives. So if she's still doing well in a cot, we will probably wait until the baby is a bit more settled into the world before we go making changes to our current daughter's sleeping situation, particularly because it's working right now. So we don't really see a great need to change it other than for it being one less thing on our list. But if it's our list, then, she's sleeping fine. So let's not go and disturb that. Now, this goes through all sorts of tips and tricks for the sleeping environment and sleep hygiene for kids. So mattress protectors, sheets, blankets, baby monitors, blackout blinds, night lights, mobiles and music, room temp, bodysuits, bundlers and baby grows. For anyone wondering what bodysuits, bundlers and baby grows are, it's basically clothing swaddles and safe sleep bags. So this book is a little Americanized if there's some words in here that you're not totally familiar with. But it goes through all of these in detail and talks about, the temperature of the room and talks about, you don't put a doona over the top of a newborn baby because why would you do that? It's not safe, and you put them in a sleep sack. There was actually a time where we had our daughter looked after, and I kept coming home to seeing blankets put over the top of her and her sleep suit, and I would just remember sprinting to the bassinet, just taking them off, and the reasoning was always, it's really cold and la la. And it just, because I've maybe done a little bit too much study of this book, it just completely freaked me out because there's risks of suffocation and all sorts of things. Obviously, she was being watched and it was during the day, but, there's some things in here that we really, really believe in that we expected for, everyone else to kind of follow with us. Now it's great because our family in particular have seen the success that we've had with the sleep routines with the kids. So they are so respectful of our routine and, visitation and all that type of thing. When we're winding the kids down from, say, 4 o'clock in the afternoon, currently, this is what happens, wind them down from about 4 in the afternoon. That's not when we entertain. We don't have visitors over then because it's going to wind the kids up and get them in a different headspace other than it doesn't tell them that the same thing that happens every day is about to happen again. It tells them something different's happening and it doesn't assure them of the routine. So we're very protective of our routine. If we are to go out, we will go out after 6 p.m. once they're both in bed. If we have someone to come and literally just house sit for us while we do go out, we make sure they come at 6 or just after 6 so that we've got the kids are actually in bed and they don't see any new faces just as they're about to go to sleep. So things like that we've picked up that we really, really stick by are what's giving us the freedom to live and have more kids and, work and have headspace for each other and hold space for the kids the following day because we're not frustrated thinking, we've been up with them all night, now we're going to spend all day with them. The things that you think of when you're in a state of sleep deprivation is, not always positive. Now, in the book, so to give you a bit of an idea on the other things that you will actually cover, you will cover feeding in the first 2 weeks. So I did sort of touch on that before. Things affecting sleep and settling. Now, this could be anything from wind, as I mentioned, to room temperature, sound, light, just from existing on Earth. And the way that you handle these sleep and settling situations as well. So, if one of the main things that comes out of this book too is that, and this is something we don't do, we let the kids settle themselves. And now they settle themselves within sort of 5 to 15 minutes at night, and lunchtime pretty much the same, obviously give or take through different phases and what have you. But by going in all the time, every time you step foot back in that room, you're stimulating the child again. So not giving them a chance to just get through that funny period, and then they will actually find sleep. Parents often, because we're connected to our children, we want to go and see that they're okay, but luckily we have monitors in this day and age so we can see them anyway without going in. But by doing that, all you're doing is just continually waking them. So there's a lot of detail on things affecting sleep and settling. The routines from birth to introducing solids, this is extremely helpful because obviously there is a direct link with what they're eating and their eating habits and their sleep and their sleeping habits. So if they're, getting enough nutrients during the day, or the things that they're eating, the transitions in their diet as well. So from when you go from, milk or formula to solids, that these are all little transitions, and there's tips and tricks along the way on how to manage all of it. The weaning process for breastfeeding, and routines from starting solids to 24 months as well. Early arrivals and siblings, so how to manage all of that, solving sleep problems, how to manage breaks to the routine, special situations like travel or guests. It covers also common health concerns and talks about SIDS a lot as well. So that's obviously a very brief overview. But what I am trying to make sure that you are aware of is that there is a resource like this available, and you shouldn't hesitate in picking up a copy from Amazon or wherever they're selling this book at the moment. But, having it as a guide, it's literally our encyclopedia. Now, the good thing about the book is you don't have to read the whole thing straight away. You literally you read the first first quarter of the book, and then you get to the chapter that you're supposed to be on, and I would leave the page open on that page for as long as our kids were that age. So for example, there's a sample routine for toddler aged 18 months. So when our daughter was 18 months, I just had it open on this page, and I just familiarized myself with this exact routine so that I knew what was happening every day, and I would leave it open on the bench so anyone coming or going from the house, and also Jake, was also aware of at this time of day, this is what happens, and it's all really simply laid out. So from what we've done in terms of that reading is that it's allowed Jake and I to parent together. There's situations where I actually wasn't physically able to look after the kids at all. Like I had mentioned, I had subsequent hospital visits. I was back in the hospital 5 days after having our son because I had found out that I had costochondritis, which is basically just inflamed ligaments and things around your rib cage, which makes a lot of sense. But the symptoms mimic that of a heart attack, which is why I called the ambulance. But, I got into hospital and I wasn't able to look after the kid. I was there, I was having scans and tests and all sorts of stuff done, while it was happening. So unless Jake was aware of, and my parents and Jake's mum and everything, who sort of stepped in to take over at that stage, without that guide, that when I went down, there wasn't anything to sort of support them except for the Save Our Sleep book. So we might leave it there on Save Our Sleep, but I think I've made it very clear as to why this is important and how easy it is to get your mitts on a copy. I'll let you know if I ever end up connecting with Tizzy Hall on LinkedIn. It's one of my goals, so let's hope that happens for me. But if you have any questions about the book, definitely happy to talk through it with you on an individual level. So send me a message on Instagram if that is something you want to do, and we can discuss it in more detail. But for now, hopefully I've given you a really nice something to read and something to focus on, especially for my pregnant ladies, but also for any parents that are, your baby might be 8 weeks old, or you might have a toddler that it's just being really tricky. There's subsequent books. There's Save Our Sleep Toddler as well, which we've got a copy of too. So it doesn't matter where you're up to in your sleep journey, and knowing that kids, mold and change their sleep routine as they get older, and oftentimes no day is the same. This is something that you can implement that will give you back some of your freedom and help you attain that sleep that you actually need. Thank you so much, ladies. Look forward to chatting more on the next pod.
Enjoyed the episode? Hit follow and check out _wingpod Oz on Instagram for a dose of wisdom getting you on the right path to success.